My Staff connects the right people and the right companies. Fast, friendly, and focused on results. From temporary staffing to executive recruitment, the My Staff team knows Nebraska business and delivers a job done right. Accounting talent is tough to find, but not for Lisa Waite. She has the pulse on the talent pool and delivers results. Save time, skip the struggle, and let My Staff partner for success. Visit mystaff.com to learn more. Whatever your hiring need or career move, My Staff is your employment partner for a job done right. Visit mystaff.com or call 402-614-1441. Because at My Staff, we're not just recruiters, we're partners in your success story.
Here's to HR, the ones who remind you not to write the email if you don't want to read it in a deposition.
The ones who remind you that if it isn't documented, it didn't happen.
The ones who build the file.
Keep the records.
And bring receipts. Cheers
to HR. So from sticky notes to half-baked emails, bad documentation has a way of coming back to haunt us, usually when it matters most. In this episode, we're going to prove that good notes are better than good intentions and way better than your memory. I'm Amy Luckenbill.
And I'm Jamie Mormon, your host for today's HR Wine Bar. So, Amy, what are we going to be talking about today?
Ooh, we're talking about what HR is best known for, which is documentation. Right. Everybody thinks that that's HR's only job is to follow people around and police what they're doing and write it down.
Right. Carry our little pocket
which is not happening. Yes, absolutely. Just following with our little golf pencil. I think it's important when we talk about documentation that we understand that documentation is not, it's not paper for paper's sake, right? It's when we get into situations that we as HR professionals kind of look at and go, something might go sideways on us here. And the purpose is to get as detailed information as we can to paint a picture of what is happening in the moment, right? And so we're collecting and we're organizing and maintaining records, but we're doing it before, during, and after throughout a whole process so that if anything does turn left on us, we have a full picture account of what has happened, because we all know our memories are garbage. It's been studied in court cases, people's perceptions of what is happening, how perspectives, like visual perspectives, change and skew what people are thinking about what happened, how we notice what we want to notice, how we have biases towards certain things. And so those are all of the things that can cloud a conversation about an issue, and having a written account that we can go back to refresh our memory and to give a truer indication of what actually happened is what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And quite frankly, how we responded, right? You mentioned the after, and that's equally as important to say we were, made aware of something that needed to be documented. We observed a situation, and here's what we did to either provide a solution or address it or put an action plan in place, and have that equally as clearly documented to tell the whole story.
Yeah. And, I've had, friends and colleagues that are, maybe not working in HR who have their own challenges at work as employees. And I tell them to do the same thing. Go
Right.
start collecting your documents, start building. I actually prefer the term contemporaneous account, which is a record that's kind of created at the beginning and tracked in real time, where the immediacy of the verbiage is kind of key, because it's going to be given more weight after the fact than something that's recalled from memory, right?
Absolutely.
So daily logs, real-time photographs. I know when my employees get in an accident, a car accident with a company vehicle, I tell them, take pictures of everything. Every
Right.
vehicle, every angle around the car, draw a diagram of how people were on the road. Don't just let a ticketing officer do all of that. Get pictures of their driver's licenses, get pictures of their insurance cards, and that way they're the complete record for the insurance agent to be able to go research the file and to see if it matches up with the police report, right? It's just extra receipts.
Objective receipts, right? And I always think too, it's important when you're going down that path of getting all of your information that, as you mentioned right out of the gate, that HR is often seen as like, here they come with their documentation. Our job is not to form an assumption or opinion or choose a side. Our job is to document that as accurately and objectively based on the facts that we have or the accounts we're given, and then investigating those if we still haven't gotten enough objective information to move us towards the next step of a resolution or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I like to think of it as data collection. And that's not to say
Absolutely.
that we as HR people are considering our past experiences with a certain employee or those types of things. Yes, we have opinions about what's happening, but our job in the moment is to collect the data. And then after the fact, when that contemporaneous account has been written after the fact, then we go back and look for the narrative and the through line and start, drawing conclusions, hopefully, building an argument around it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a big difference, right? Into maybe how um the perception of documentation might look versus the actual process and how much time actually goes into ensuring that we have accurate and thorough documentation, not just writing down our account or what was shared, but having all of those other pieces that often fall into place with attendance records or other, documentation, emails, things of that nature that are going to help us provide very factual information.
Right, right. And sometimes there are instances, and I don't know which side I fall on this, but there are sometimes instances where you don't want to be going and looking for the information. I'm thinking specifically of an attendance issue. I, as an HR person, am not out to get a gotcha on anybody. And until someone tells me there's an attendance issue, I'm not going to go research and audit a file. That's a supervisor's job to keep track to keep track of attendance. And then if there's an issue, bring it to me and we'll work through it together. So there are a couple of lawsuits that I'm thinking of that are especially pertinent to this conversation. The first one being the cat's paw theory of liability, which comes from Staub versus Proctor Hospital, right? So this is about 15 years old, but the Supreme Court established that employers can be held liable for discrimination, even if the person who was the decision maker didn't have all the information and wasn't biased, but someone else influenced and was biased, right? And so this documentation question was a major part of that court case, right? So if the supervisor is performing acts that are intended to cause an adverse action, and that action is then the cause of the ultimate decision, even though somebody else made the decision, then the employer is liable, right? And so this paper trail is directly influencing those types of court cases.
Absolutely. And it's never fun when you're asked for documentation that you cannot provide because it doesn't exist.
Well, it's not fun, but then again, as an HR person, that's not always our fault,
Mm-mm,
right?
mm-mm.
We're there
Which,
to partner with people.
right. Which brings us to the point of training our managers well, too, and coaching them on what good documentation looks like and what bad documentation looks like and where you draw the line between what's too much documentation versus what are the things we need to actually have a good, I guess, account of any
Right.
events or incidents that may have occurred.
Exactly. And when you have a manager come to you and say, this employee did X, Y, Z. No, he didn't. What do you mean he didn't? He did this and that. You have provided me no evidence of that. You don't have any reports. You don't have any prior write-ups. You don't have any. Where's your proof that this happened? Well, and then we get into hearsay, and then we get into, well, I haven't done my job as a manager. So, our job also as HR is to go, nope, didn't happen. It's not documented anywhere.
Yep.
So I
Or we
can't help
didn't
you
follow
in
the
this.
steps. Mhm.
We didn't follow the steps that we laid out in our procedures and our handbook and those those
Yes.
types of things.
Mhm.
Um, Another court case that's actually at top of mind for HR people right now is Mohammed versus Sherm, right? This is an active case that is going on, where and I'm going to go read some notes, so forgive me for looking away, but the federal court in this case denied SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, a motion to dismiss a former employee's race discrimination and retaliation lawsuit. This is a major thing in our community, with SHRM because it's actively ongoing. Ashley Hurd over at HR Besties podcast she's an attorney, and she's breaking it down all the way through this case, but documentation is playing a part in it. The former employee is alleging that SHRM's internal investigation into her retaliation claim was a sham. The court noted that the jury could reasonably find that the organization had already decided to terminate her before conducting the investigation, and the courts are willing to scrutinize employer motives and confirm that investigations were conducted in good faith. So they're directly getting into this conversation about documentation with our national organization as an
Right.
employer. Um, so bring receipts.
Bring the receipts. Amy, I lost you.
Edit. Sorry, that's okay, yep. So edit, and we're back on. So our worst situation is we have fabricated documents, right? Where in this case, they're saying the former employee is saying that the investigation was a sham. Um, Bad would be no documents. Okay, meh, is documents after the fact. And our best is that real-time contemporaneous account, which, to your point, train your managers well so that they know when to get HR in early.
Yes, absolutely. That piece is equally as important to know when to escalate as well. I might need some guidance on this one.
Jamie, what would you say are some in the documentation process? What are some steps that you think people should, or mistakes maybe, things that folks should try to avoid if at all possible?
Absolutely. One that comes to mind, for sure is making assumptions or editorializing someone's behavior and why that behavior might be happening. I know they're late because they just don't care about their job, or, they're just being lazy, or they have a bad attitude for whatever reason. We can't make assumptions, right? There's likely something causing the behavior. If they're late to work, we need to dig in and understand why there is a recurring issue. So, really looking back at the facts and not making those assumptions or editorializing why a behavior or certain situation is occurring.
That's a great one.
Yeah. And, I think to that point too, I was using an example of attendance, and oftentimes being able to provide a visual for someone too of, looking at those dates and, if it was a call out or if they were late to work, and identifying patterns that might be existing within those things. Having those dates and times is going to be very important versus just saying, oh, you were late 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Well, if we can actually show dates and times, that's going to mean a lot more to helping maybe bring a better conversation to the table and showing that employee, here are the times that that occurred, as one example. It seems to be something that we see quite a bit of. We have the memory that they were maybe late or didn't come in, but if we don't have the dates, that can be difficult.
Yeah, what day was that? Yeah, yeah. What's interesting is that, the under documentation, no dates, no time, no detail, those types of things, and then the complete other end of that spectrum is, you know, documenting every sneeze. Right?
Right.
Just you can tell when a manager is just on someone with purpose
Yes.
to show them out the door or whatever the case may be, and they just are on them multiple times, and then our job as HR to go, "Okay, are you having a level, amount of oversight with every employee? What is it about this employee that's making you dot every single I and hashtag not hashtag, tally mark every single misstep."
Right. Well, and the relevance to the actual concern, right? And if there's multiple concerns, keeping the documentation relevant to the actual concern. If it's a behavior that's happening, the documentation should be relevant to that particular behavior. If it's a performance concern, the documentation should be relevant to whatever the performance concern is and how we're addressing those things on a day-to-day basis. Because sometimes you do run into those things where
Absolutely.
there's multiple concerns at once, but keeping that documentation relevant to the issue at hand.
Right, and when describing those different issues, maybe siloing them and, I'm thinking of a plate and having those little plate dividers where this goes over there and this goes over there and this goes over here. And yes, they're all tied together in one person, but we're dealing with performance and we have to be explicit in how we address that. Otherwise, an employee is going to start making connections and complicating the conversation. Not that the conversation isn't already complicated, but it's our job to parse it out and make it, accessible for everyone.
Right. Well, and quite honestly, the way we might handle those situations too, if we identify performance concerns and we're documenting specific things that are happening, we probably have to go back to ourselves as managers too and say, ooh, is there something on my end that I have not provided that's leading to X, Y, and Z performance issue? Did we skip the training that we had great intentions to get to, but after onboarding, everything went to the wayside and we had to jump into something else? And we actually need to go back to square one. So that conversation may look different, even though you may have some documentation of things that aren't working. The onus might be more on that manager to provide opportunities for solution and ensure that training is in place or the right resources are in place before we go down a path of, some sort of corrective action or something along those lines. We may just need to kind of reframe the conversation that we may originally have thought we were going to have.
I love that. I love that reflection piece, and I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit. I have actually said to my own direct report, "This is my expectation, and the first thing I do when I feel like an employee is not meeting my expectation is to evaluate where I have maybe modeled less than best practices." Right? And I have said to an employee before, "This is my expectation, but I'm modeling this instead, and I need to do a better job. So let's the both of us hold each other accountable." And you know what? It just strengthens the work relationship when I say, "This is how I have failed you in this instance, but I still need you to do these things in addition." And it's just a richer conversation that comes from the documentation, right? I need to model better in this way, and it's on paper, and I'm holding myself accountable to that. But
Right.
reflection is key.
Absolutely. And I always like to think of, when you are having a conversation, you've documented something and now you have to bring that to the table and actually, deliver some sort of message around whatever concern might be at stake. that it's a conversation with the person, right? I'm delivering my reality of what, is occurring or what we've observed or what is impacting the team, and also what that impact is doing to our organization, the client we serve, that person's success. It's really just to relay our reality of what we've observed or been able to document up to that point, and invite that person to the table with us to talk about what's going on, their perspective, and how we can work together. Like you said, reflecting together, where can we both maybe meet in the middle, to make this more successful, and document it with a timeline,
I love that.
a
I
30-day
love that you
check-in.
said from my 30-day check-in, and then actually put it on your calendar, right? Okay, so I have a proposal. Um, let's let's talk a little bit about let's have a wine flight. I think we did this in our last episode. We're
Yes.
gonna have a wine flight and talk about kind of behavior versus attitude, and what's concrete documentation and what's maybe feelings driven emotional content,
Yep.
right? And so
Yep.
so the super dry is the legalese, right? We don't want to be too legalese about it, but we also don't want to be completely driven by emotion, right? There's
Of
a
course.
balance in the middle. So let's say we have let's say Ed is causing problems on the team, right? And you have a manager come to you and say, Ed doesn't care. He always brings the mood down. Right?
He's an energy
That's
vampire.
he's an energy vampire. Like, that might be true. Let's not document it in that fashion. That is very emotion driven. It's very, let's call it sweet on our wine flight, right? And the opposite end of the spectrum might be super detailed, which we love, but between October 10th and October 24th, Ed failed to complete 3 assigned deliverables and did not provide status updates to the team during scheduled meetings, and impacted project timelines that resulted in a 3-week delay to this client, causing this much money revenue, right? It just goes down: data, 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 data. We love data. Data is good. But also, going down that super dry legal ease, documenting every sneeze, is not going to get Ed to come around to performing better, right? And so my question would be, what's our kind of middle of the road? Let's find a balanced, Chardonnay situation
Absolutely.
and see what's in the middle. Um, I think having a qualifier that says, Ed seems disengaged might be something that's not so emotions driven. It's his behavior. He seems disengaged. He's not participating in meetings. He's not responding to emails. He's not whatever the list might be, but it's middle of the road that's not so data heavy and
Absolutely.
still can open a conversation with Ed. It can be the right documentation, but also open a conversation for resolution when we're
Right.
having that conversation.
I
Do
love
you have
that.
any suggestions for ways we might have those conversations about other topics?
Absolutely. It looks like we've got another scenario that we could look at. Apparently, I'm on an attendance kick today. I don't know why, but my
You
example is
I
going to
don't think you
be
get it all the time.
it's a right. The minimum expectation of every job is to show up. So that is a piece. But uh, if we have Maria, who's always late, right? Which always also maybe a concerning word on the sweet side of this and the more emotional side of it. And we're saying, oh, it's because she just doesn't take her job seriously. She doesn't care about this job. Where on the flip side, we could have
Yeah.
documentation, yes, that, again, to Amy's point, lays out very specific, detailed uh, data, including dates that between, October 1st and October 31st, Maria clocked in after her scheduled start time on 5 occasions, ranging from 8 to 25 minutes late, and she was canceled on May 15th. which I love that this particular example talks about an action that was taken in between, because that would be one of my first questions is, hey, this has been going on for seemingly, a month here. What have we done to address or check in or, ensure that something hasn't changed in Maria's, schedule or personal life or something else that's going on that's impacting her ability to clock in on time. And in this case, it, looks like we have an opportunity to ask a few more questions on what happened on that particular date that she was counseled. And find out, if there's anything else we can do to step in and provide resolution or what a next conversation might look like, including more documentation.
Yeah. I just recently had a client who had an employee that they wanted to counsel, and their comment was it was about their like customer service, not necessarily to a customer, but to like everyone. And they're like, well, this person's rude and just talks down to everyone. I'm like, okay, let's run into that more. And it takes a couple iterations, right, to have more conversations. So rude and talk down is different than being disrespectful. And in what way is this employee disrespectful? And then, well, not really disrespectful, just like blunt, like matter of fact. They're like, okay, well, disrespectful and being matter of fact and direct are two different things. So, what is it about this person being direct that has become a problem? And who is it a problem for? Right? Is it a
Right.
problem for a fellow employee who's come to you because they don't feel like they're getting enough care and soft warm fuzzies? Right? And is this person's job to provide soft warm fuzzies, or is this person's job to be direct and get the job done? Right? And so having those questions is and those conversations is really important, that we're documenting correctly. What does talking down to mean? Right?
Absolutely.
Talking down to implies that there's someone on the receiving end that feels like they're being talked down to. And it might not be about the employee you're trying to write up at all. It might be about the other employee who needs a little tougher skin. We're on a timeline. Like, let's go.
Right.
We need to be doing these things. And so I think sometimes in documentation, we take those employee concerns or those manager things, and they just start writing whatever they've heard from another person without asking the questions. And then it becomes a big snowball effect. Yes, we wanna document. Yes, we want to make sure we have, um, a case file in case things go south on us, but in
Right.
reality, we wanna preserve the relationship. We want to move the business forward, and we can't always skip to the driest legalese in order to get to the heart of the matter, right? And in this particular
Absolutely.
case, this employee should not have been written up. It was worth a conversation to say, hey, you know what, this person that you're talking to has a little bit slower pace. They're a little slower to change. They need a little more kid glove and tender loving care. And yes, that's not your job necessarily to guard that person's need for that. But also, as a coworker, we want everyone to feel, a little bit of the warm and fuzzy. And could you, as a help to the whole team, could you implement a little bit of that just to take the edge off? We appreciate that you're driving the business forward, right?
Yes. Love that.
So
Hmm.
it didn't even need to get to a documentation point. It was just what's the reality of the situation and who's upset and why.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's so common too, because we all have different personalities. We all have different communication styles. We've got some people that are very extroverted and love to have those side conversations during the day at work, where others are kind of more heads down. I want to get my work done. I've got a deadline and things I want to do. So, figuring out ways to build those relationships early on in the team dynamics or as new people come onto the team, taking time to learn who are the players on our team, right? And what do each of us, need to be successful in the team, and maybe how we communicate differently so that we're setting each other up for success. So that in those situations, not that it excuses bad behavior by any means, but we have an opportunity to maybe go back and say, ooh, there's a little bit of tension here because the way that both of us are coming at a particular project or approaching a situation looks very different. And we're going to have to both kind of meet in the middle going forward. But having some awareness of that may help and cut down on some of those um, situations that escalate maybe more than they need to at times.
Absolutely. I love all of that. Hey friends, you know what? My wine glass is empty. So while we go and we get our second pour and get ready to talk a little bit more about documentation and contemporaneous accounts, let's hear from one of our sponsors. And just remember, our ads are short, so don't forward through, just let it breathe.
My Staff connects the right people and the right companies, fast, friendly, and focused on results. From temporary staffing to executive recruitment, the My Staff team knows Nebraska business and delivers a job done right. If you've got a big project coming up, don't stress your team. Call Virginia Frazee at My Staff. Omaha businesses trust Virginia to find the right temporary, permanent, and legal talent fast. For skilled corporate support that delivers results, call 402 614 1441. Whatever your hiring need or career move, My Staff is your employment partner for a job done right. Visit mystaff.com or call 402 614 1441. Because at My Staff, we're not just recruiters, we're partners in your success story.
And we are back. Okay, Jamie, I found this Reddit post that I think is a documentation nightmare, and but it's really, really funny. So I've sent it over to you. It's from someone called T Sullivan 815 on Reddit. It's just a few months old. So if you will you read this for us and tell me your thoughts, just so everybody knows this is new information to Jamie. She hasn't seen this before, so she's gonna read it for us.
Yeah, I'm getting the first look here. So love a good Reddit post. So let's see what we've got. It was March 31st, and we were cleaning the office before we left. Knowing tomorrow was April Fool's Day, we decided to prank the office manager. He was a total freak for softball, played on teams all summer long, and they were dang good. He had trophies all over his office. One of the guys wrote a note, "Sorry about the trophy. I'll get it repaired and back by next week." And we took a championship trophy and hid it in his credenza. There was no damage. It was literally just a note. We came to work the next day thinking we were going to get him good. Oh man, it was going to be awesome. Well, he got in early, found the note, and went absolutely crazy, for lack of a better word. We came in and he screamed at every one of us, one at a time and collectively as a group. Finally, I was like, geez, dude, it was an expletive joke. Go look in your credenza. Just before our morning break, about 10 a.m., he brought us in one at a time and presented us with a write-up. His point was we wouldn't prank the owner like that, and he deserved as much respect. This would be a part of my permanent record with this place. I was upset, protested, but finally signed it under protest and went to my desk at break time. Like I always did on break, I called my wife. She asked how the prank went, so I told her. I was seething. I told her she might see me early today. I didn't know if I was going to stick it out if he couldn't take another expletive joke. After break, he came into our room and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you all. April Fools." The write-ups were a joke, and he was just getting us back.
Whoo! So
That is
thoughts?
something. I
That is
can't,
insane.
I'm processing that whole situation, uh, the emotions of that day and picturing what that office scenario actually looked like and what was happening in the background of while he was upset, the other person pretending to be upset. What is everyone else doing at this time as well?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine the other people in the office seeing people go in and coming out with, like, a piece of paper and being
Insane.
absolutely
Mhm.
gobsmacked. What a nightmare. What a
So
nightmare.
bad. So bad.
So bad.
So now everyone's gonna
I
have some documentation at this point.
right? Do better, managers.
So many red
Do better.
flags there.
So many red flags. I mean, on one hand, heck of a prank. On the other hand, like, know your audience. This is not okay. You're messing with people. First of all, rule number one in HR, especially if you handle payroll, don't mess with people's money.
Right.
Do not, do
That
not mess with people's
crossing
money.
a line. Mhm.
Crossing a line. So
That's a
now
good
the
one, Amy.
question is, what's that?
Is this like a whole channel of what not to do?
It's a whole like worst write-ups thread. Like, what have you been written up for in your life, right? Um, yeah. Yes. So my question then is, was this manager written up for that? Like, what kind of complaints came after that?
Exactly,
Justified
yeah.
complaints from the employees that their livelihood was threatened. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
nightmare.
Yeah,
So now using documentation as a weapon, this is a truly weaponized, um, power display of power, dynamic that I just cannot get behind. I cannot get
absolutely.
behind. But go
No.
find it. It's an
Sounds like
interesting
there might
read.
be some very entertaining content there.
There are some very entertaining content, so I love a good April Fool's joke as well, but, no.
That one's
So,
crossing a few lines.
how can we do better? Jamie, you mentioned, in our first half, and again, we're now on the this manager needs some training and a talking to. What are your thoughts about some key top of mind things that we should be thinking about as we educate our managers on documentation and contemporaneous accounts and why they're important and how to do them appropriately? What are your top, like, 3 takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is probably one of my favorite areas of training, and I work with a lot of managers who are new managers too. I think there's an assumption at times that when someone moves into a manager role, they're going to be able to figure it out, and oftentimes that's not always the case, right? You have somebody who knows the technical piece of their role really, really well. Maybe this is the first time that they're in a management role, so I really encourage our clients, people that are, in HR seats to hold training for those first time managers, set the stage well, right out of the gate and really help them understand the policies in your handbook so they're able to go back and reference that in the documentation, right? Is everything in there and is every scenario going to be able to be found in the handbook? No, but it at least gives us a reference point to be consistent. It gives us a reference point to say, well, this is in place for this reason. It allows you something very objective to point back to. So training our managers on what even is in our handbook so that we can apply policies, consistency in documentation. Because oftentimes they may have seen the handbook when they got hired, and that might be the last time they've ever looked at it, right? So finding ways to continually train on the handbook. So that's one piece, and using those policies as a reference point or at least a starting point when we're maybe looking at documentation. And then kind of how I mentioned that difference between behavior and performance documentation. And not that we're going to document things differently in terms of objective content, but it's really maybe how we're going to move in on some of those things and start to address that and what pieces you can do early on as you start to maybe see patterns with behavior or attendance, and starting to have those conversations that you're training managers to document, like, I met with this person on X, Y, and Z on this date, and we talked through this, and here's where it was. And then if it's occurring again, right, they're starting to not build, to Amy's point, every little sneeze that the person had, but they're relating it back to that same or similar concern, and you have a good piece to help that manager be successful in what a next step might look like. So training our managers on that documentation, and then the performance piece, really asking themselves as they're getting ready to document, have we done everything to help this person be successful? And is this issue happening in a vacuum, or is it something that we didn't have an opportunity to do, and we can already, think of some ways we can help this person, and then determine if documentation's needed at that moment, or down the line if things aren't going well, how we're going to document that. So I think just having that training out of the gate, recognizing those differences in how we might address a situation and how we might document because of that, and providing those documentation even on the solutions that we're putting in place so that we can hold ourselves accountable as managers too.
That is a terrific recap, and I love that number 1 is go to the handbook. I
Right?
remember distinctly having a manager come to me to ask a question, and I went, "Hold, please." Right? Because my initial thought was one answer, and I was like, "We have a new handbook. Let me go just verify." And they were kind of dumbfounded that HR didn't have it memorized, and I was like, "This is a very unusual case. Let's go look at the handbook and see what it
Absolutely.
says." So, it's a resource.
Right, and honestly,
Absolutely.
another good reminder too, if you haven't reviewed your handbook in a while, do it on a regular basis and re-roll it out when you have those updates. That's a really good reminder, Amy.
Yeah. I'm a habit stacker, so I have, in the last few years, purposely put my handbook side by side with, annual reviews, so that in the review process, we're tacking on to that, a job description review. Is this job description still accurate? If not, let's have a chat about it. Has your role expanded? Has it contracted? Has it shifted completely? Do you even have a job description? Right? Having that conversation, because all of the other conversations are based on that and the handbooks. So let's get those tied together, and it also brings it to the fore for the employee as well to go, "Oh, yes, these are the things I'm being held accountable to in
Absolutely.
driving the business." So,
Yes.
yeah, habit
Yes.
stack it, put it where it
Habit
makes
stack.
sense.
Love it.
Yep, yep. Well, this has been a deep dive into documentation, the good, the bad, and the April foolishness. So, I think it's time for a toast, Jamie. What do you think?
I agree. I think we're ready.
Excellent. Here's to HR, the ones who gather the documentation,
The ones who write the accounting of events in real time,
the last ones to be looped in,
but the first ones to sit for a deposition.
the keeper of the files.
And always remember the bringer of the receipts.
Cheers to
Cheers
HR.
to HR.
My staff connects the right people and the right companies, fast, friendly, and focused on results. From temporary staffing to executive recruitment, the My Staff team knows Nebraska business and delivers a job done right. Looking for your next HR role in Nebraska, Iowa, Colorado, or South Dakota? Everyone knows Kim Lynch at My Staff because she connects great people with great careers. Let Kim help you land your next HR dream job. Email Kim at mystaff.com. Whatever your hiring need or career move, My Staff is your employment partner for a job done right. Visit mystaff.com or call 402-614-1441. Because at My Staff, we're not just recruiters, we're partners in your success story.